Hello, I'm Richard Seltzer. I'd like to share with you a romantic story from my book, To Gether Tales, which will soon be published by All Things That Matter Press. In this book, the narrator, in the midst of the pandemic, thinks back to a 7-day Caribbean cruise he was on a few years before, on which 8 people shared a dinner table and swapped stories every night. The narrator laments that with social distancing and mask wearing, love at first sight may no longer be possible. Imagine that you are on that cruise, and this story is told by someone sitting across from you at the dinner table. A special romance. Carl held up his hand to request a delay, ate the last 2 shrimp on his plate, and then began his story for those assembled at table 110 on the Regal Princess. I witnessed this on another cruise. On the Star Princess, down the coast of Chile and around Cape Horn. At first, this was a matter of observation and speculation, but then I got the real story from the father. I saw an attractive young woman with a short man whose facial expression and gestures made him look mentally deficient. The woman treated him with understanding and compassion, as if he were a child and needed help, but yet with the respect due to an equal. At first I presumed that she was the man's sister, and I found their loving relationship remarkable. They were with an older man who I presumed was their father. Later I saw the woman and her brother playing in the indoor swimming pool with their father watching from a deck chair nearby. I sat down next to the father and started to read a Grisham mystery from the ship's library. When I caught his eye, I mentioned how beautiful brotherly, sisterly love is. He looked at me in surprise, so I clarified. The couple in the pool, I've seen them and you together before, and I guessed that they are brother and sister, and you their father. Please pardon me if I guessed wrong. They were from Acapulco. He told me that the man who looked like a boy was his son, Alejandro, and the woman, Beatriz, was his wife. My wife, he explained, devoted herself to the welfare of Alejandro, our only child who was born with Down syndrome. She loved him unconditionally. When she died, I was overwhelmed with all I needed to do for Alejandro. I hired one nurse after another at great expense. They fulfilled their duties as expected, but treated Alejandro as if he were less than a person. They watched the clock as if doing what they needed to do were a chore. They looked forward to the time when their duties would end so they could get on with their lives. Alejandro became morose, withdrawn. He asked for his mother and didn't understand why she was no longer around. He did not know the meaning of death. When he reached the age of 21, I posted an ad on the internet seeking a bride, someone willing to marry Alejandro and care for him for the rest of his life in exchange for room and board and a substantial stipend. I interviewed dozens of applicants before I met Beatriz. She was intelligent and compassionate. She was 30 and destitute through no fault of her own. She was an orphan. At 15, she had run off with a ne'er-do-well and been abandoned far from the town of her birth. She took over as Alejandro's nurse. She took to Alejandro and he to her immediately. She glowed in his presence and he in hers. When Beatriz and Alejandro married, I rejoiced that my son's well-being and happiness were now in the hands of a respectful and loving wife, not just a hireling. But as it turned out, all was not as it seemed. Beatriz was still in contact with Diego, her former lover. It was Diego who had convinced her to marry Alejandro for the money, which she shared with Diego, but even more for entry to a rich man's house. Diego intended that she would make it easy for him to steal from me, her father-in-law. She didn't hesitate to share her income with Diego and sometimes snuck out at night to spend time with him, but she balked at the idea of burglarizing her benefactor. One night, when I was away, Diego broke into our house, using what he had heard from Beatriz to guide him in finding valuables. She tried to stop him. He pushed her aside. Alejandro saw them struggling and thought that Beatriz was in danger. He flung himself at the intruder to defend her, fighting with total abandon, thinking nothing of his own life, and trying to save the one he loved. Diego, in shock, fought back in self-defense. They grappled on the balcony, up against the railing. Diego called to Beatrice to help him fling the incensed Alejandro over the railing. Instead, she rushed to rescue Alejandro, and together they pushed Diego to his death. Since then, the pair have been inseparable, devoted to one another. If you enjoyed this story, please let me know in comments and I'll do more of the same. You can find my books at Amazon. My name again is Richard Seltzer, as in Alka-Seltzer. My most recent books are Parallel Lives, Beyond the Fourth Door, and Nevermind. They can be read in any order. They're independent stories with overlapping themes and styles. Each presents a different view of reality, a different way of trying to make sense of the mysteries of life.